Have you ever wondered how babies survived thousands of years ago? Long before hospitals, vaccines, baby formula, or even clean running water. It may seem almost impossible. Human infants are born more helpless than almost any other mammal. They cannot walk, feed themselves, or even hold up their own heads. Yet for hundreds of thousands of years, they still survived. So how did ancient parents keep them alive? The answer is a story of constant care, clever traditions, and one of the strongest survival strategies our species has ever developed. The first challenge began the moment a baby was born. Without modern medicine, childbirth was dangerous for both the mother and the child. There were no antibiotics, blood transfusions, or emergency surgeries. If complications occurred, there was often very little anyone could do. Even when the birth went well, the newborn faced many risks. Cold temperatures, infections, dehydration, and hunger could become life-threatening within days. The most important protection was the mother herself. For almost all of human history, babies were breastfed. Breast milk provided not only food but also water, antibodies, and nutrients that helped protect infants against disease. In many places, exclusive breastfeeding lasted for months before other foods were introduced. Unlike today, there were no bottles or commercial infant formula. If a mother could not produce enough milk or died during childbirth, another breastfeeding woman sometimes fed the baby. Historians call these women wet nurses, and this practice has existed in many cultures for thousands of years. Among hunter-gatherers, mothers often carried babies almost constantly. Instead of strollers or cribs, infants were held in slings made from animal skins, woven fibers, or cloth. Staying close kept babies warm, made breastfeeding easier, and allowed parents to react quickly if something was wrong. This constant contact had another advantage. Human babies are poor at regulating their own body temperature. Being carried against an adult's body helped them stay warm, especially during cold nights. In many ancient communities, babies also slept close to their parents. Sleeping nearby allowed mothers to feed infants frequently throughout the night. Since newborns have very small stomachs, they need to eat often, sometimes every few hours. But feeding was only part of survival. Keeping babies clean was much harder than today. There were no disposable diapers. Instead, parents used soft moss, animal fur, grass, cloth, or other absorbent natural materials depending on where they lived. These materials were changed regularly whenever possible to reduce skin irritation. Bathing also depended on the environment. Some groups gently washed babies with warm water, while others cleaned them with damp cloths or carefully wiped away dirt when water was scarce. Another invisible danger was infection. People in the ancient world did not know about bacteria or viruses, but they often noticed that certain practices improved survival. Many cultures washed wounds with clean water when available, kept living areas relatively tidy, and avoided obviously spoiled food. Even without understanding germs, generations of observation helped families develop useful habits. Babies were rarely left alone. In many hunter-gatherer societies, caring for children was not only the parents' responsibility. Grandparents, older siblings, aunts, uncles, and other members of the group often helped carry, protect, entertain, and watch over young children. Anthropologists sometimes describe humans as cooperative breeders because raising a child usually involved an entire community, rather than just two parents. This teamwork dramatically increased a baby's chances of surviving. Of course, life was still extremely difficult. Many children sadly did not survive infancy. Disease, accidents, harsh weather, food shortages, and complications during birth claimed countless young lives throughout history. Infant mortality in ancient populations was far higher than it is today, but that does not mean ancient parents cared less. Archaeological discoveries tell a very different story. Tiny burials, carefully prepared graves, and children's belongings buried beside them show that families deeply loved and mourned their children. Even tens of thousands of years ago, parents experienced the same grief that people feel today. As babies grew older, new challenges appeared. Around 6 months of age, breast milk alone was usually no longer enough. Parents gradually introduced soft foods that babies could swallow safely. Depending on the region, this might include mashed fruits, cooked roots, soft grains, fish, meat broth, or foods that adults had already chewed into a softer consistency. Today this may sound unusual, but before blenders and food processors, pre-chewing food was a practical way to help infants eat solid foods. Learning to walk brought even more dangers. Ancient landscapes were filled with rivers, cliffs, fires, dangerous animals, and sharp stone tools. Instead of fences or child-proof homes, protection came from constant supervision. Adults watched children closely and slowly taught them which places, animals, and objects were dangerous. Children also learned by copying adults. Long before schools existed, observation was one of humanity's greatest teachers. A child who carefully watched parents gather plants, make tools, build shelters, or avoid danger gained knowledge that could one day save their own life. Interestingly, humans evolved to have unusually long childhoods compared to other animals. While many mammals become independent quickly, human children spend years learning. Scientists believe this extended childhood allowed our ancestors to develop complex language, social skills, and survival knowledge before facing adulthood on their own. In other words, staying dependent for longer may have helped humans become one of the most successful species on Earth. When we imagine ancient life, it is easy to focus on hunting mammoths or surviving harsh winters. But every civilization, every invention, and every generation depended on something much smaller. A newborn who simply needed to survive one more day. Without hospitals, vaccines, diapers, or modern medicine, millions of babies still reached adulthood because families adapted, communities worked together, and knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. The survival of those tiny children made every chapter of human history possible. And if even one generation had failed to protect its youngest members, none of us would be here today.